What's up, Porch Nation? Welcome back to Porch Nation headquarters here on fabulous College Hill in Worcester, Massachusetts. It was week 16 here in the Greatest League, the second round of our playoffs, and we had one for the ages. We came into this week with 4 teams battling for a spot in the 2023 Greatest League Super Bowl Showdown, and 4 teams battling for a spot in the 7th place game, also now our fight for the 5th pick in the 2024 draft. As we briefly discussed near the end of last season, we're going to be shaking things up for the coming off season. Going into the 2024 season's draft, we're now doing a lottery for our first pick. What that means is the 3 last place finishing teams will be randomly drawn to determine who gets picks 1 through 3. Our 13th place team, which we already know at this point is Adam, will keep the 4th pick as they have in previous seasons, and the winner of our consolation bracket now gets the 5th pick in next year's draft. I am open to shaking things up further in future off seasons, but for now, that's what we got new this coming off season. So let's take a look at who qualified for our first ever fight for 5th and how we arrived at some 2022 deja vu. Week 16, 6 games, let's get into it. All right, it's here. The week before the week, the showdown before the show, the turn before the river. We had some phenomenal matchups all up and down the card, including 4 out of our 6 games coming down to less than 10 points. With 4 of our games being precursors to the finales, let's check in on the 2 end-of-the-line games. In the consolation, Pete was able to end this season with a win and a season series sweep against Alex in the 11th place game. Both teams came in limping for their Week 9 head-to-head, but exceeded their projections this time. Pete by almost 30 points. This one came down to less than 5 points, with Pete coming from behind to win thanks to Baltimore's dominant Monday night performance. Moving on then to our 5th place game, Dylan and Steve faced off for the second time this season. In Week 8, Steve won a narrow one as both teams well exceeded their projections. Well, Dylan would get his revenge by a big margin this time, barely missing 180 points, posting by far this week's highest individual score, and taking 5th place in the Greatest League's 2023 season. In further consolation fare, fresh off a bye week, Josh Steinberg makes it 2 against Joe this season, posting this week's 3rd highest all-around score. Joe will continue on to the 9th place game, and Josh Steinberg qualifies for our first ever fight for 5th. The bye week was less friendly to Ross, who faced off against Andy this week. This game came down to less than 5 points as both teams underperformed against projection, but Andy was able to gather enough for this close win and move on to the fight for 5th, while Ross heads on to face off against Joe for 9th place. Okay, our championship bracket's second round featured 2 close games between the 4 best teams of the 2023 season. To the untrained eye, not much has changed in a year. Ethan represents the West, whereas I did last season, but Berg, Skinner, and Josh Marshall all made it this far a year ago. Last year, Berg beat me by just over 7, and Skinner beat Josh by less than 2 damn points. Well, the matchup switched up a bit, and the margins were a little less razor thin, but we got a dose of deja vu. Berg put up this week's 2nd highest score, exceeding his projection by almost exactly 14, but before we would know that, he would have to sit and watch as Josh had Roquan Smith for Baltimore and Jordan Mason for San Fran going on Monday. Josh beat his projection by about 28, but would ultimately fall shy by just over 9 points, sending James Berger II to his 2nd Super Bowl in a row. Josh played a great season and will finish out next week in the 3rd place game. And now, the Greatest League's final game of the week of the 2023 season. We've had some amazing showdowns this season, and that trend continued on into the playoffs. This one was another one for the ages. Skinner and Ethan faced off earlier this season in Week 8. where Ethan won a close one and secured the head-to-head tiebreaker that would eventually earn him a first-round bye. Though Ethan came into Week 16 with a big projection deficit, projections don't mean anything when it's all said and done. A point of comparison for pundits, perhaps, but all that matters are the points you do or don't put up. And these teams were evenly matched there. Monday night became the decider in this one as Ethan had 4 San Francisco starters on his roster, including Brock Purdy and 2 of his top targets. But Skinsy had CMC. This looked close, and Ethan was projected a victory most of the way, but once Purdy was replaced by Darnold, it was practically a done deal. In the end, Skinner wins this one by less than 7, more than tripling his margin of victory compared to round 2 last season, and we get a Super Bowl rematch for the first time in league history. And there it is, Week 16. I can't believe we've come this far, and we've got just 1 week left to go. Week 17 is already underway, and we've got our biggest games of the season on tap. Our first ever Fight for Fifth features division rivals Josh Steinberg and Andy facing off for the 3rd time this season with the 5th pick in next year's draft on the line. Who will come out on top? Also, can Berg make up for his poor showing in last season's Super Bowl? Will Matt Skinner close the gap further between he and Dylan's Super Bowl trophy cases? This week is the final answer. I can't wait to find out what happens. So until next time, Happy New Year, Porch Nation.
Bloop.